5 CR, 1.6 CR cash, 1.6 CR equity, and around 2 CR, a little bit more, what the NFTs that I got from this company are worth today. This is the 2023 income, and it's easy to look at this and be like, IIT or being at the right place at the right time. But roll the clock back a year when I was in a pretty cushy job, jahan pe my base salary was almost the same amount, 1.6 CR. But I took the bet that Web3, even though it is an industry that's dying, seems like the right bet for me to take. Back then, it was probably at the lowest it has ever been, September 2022. Joined a company, had two offers. One where 1.6 ki jagah, the cash component was 2 CR and there was equity committed upfront. Here, only cash was committed upfront. Everything else was bonus based and NFTs were just, something that could go in any direction. Yet, ended up choosing this company. Why was I able to take that bet? And similarly, if I was taking this bet this year, what are my predictions as to how and where companies are going? And ways to reach there, basically a high-level roadmap of how I would study technologies today to learn the right set of skills that are needed in these companies. Let's get right into it. My very first prediction for 2024 is that hiring will go niche. What do I mean when I say this? I basically think that companies are going to require very specific roles. For example, I need a front-end engineer, back-end engineer, DevOps engineer, and that is what they will be hiring for. It is much better to be the master of one thing than being a jack of all trades in 2024. The reason for this is simple, that companies don't really need someone to own everything anymore. They don't want someone who's decent at everything. They need someone who's really good at a specific thing that is a pain point for them right now. They want them to own that specific stack in that company. This takes us to the second point. Being a specialist is going to be important. You don't have to learn everything today. It's actually very enticing to jump from one technology to another. Okay, I'm not getting a job in Java. Might be because there are more jobs in the MERN stack or vice versa. But in the end, there are always opportunities for the top 1%. Whatever you end up choosing, try to be in the top 1% of that specific technology rather than jumping ships from one technology to another. Being self-reliant. Gone are the days, I feel, where a company is going to come on campus and hire 200 engineers based on their DSA skills and then eventually figure out where does one go, give you a 6-month warming up period to understand the stack and fit you as a piece of the puzzle so that you stay in that company for 20 years. That might still happen. If I'm being honest, I am not very well connected with the FANG ecosystem or DSA ecosystem. My personal thoughts here are companies are no longer euphoric. There was a time when you were incentivized to put more engineers in your office because that's what you wanted to show the investors. That was how the market was growing. This was a metric of a good company. Now, in the last 2 years, as funding has toned down, companies have realized they have to move profitable. It's much easier to spend someone else's money on engineers or some other expense. It's much harder to spend the money you've earned yourself. As companies become more profitable, this is not investor money they're spending, it's their own. They'll be much more conscious when they're hiring. They're not going on a campus, hiring 20 people and then figuring out what to do with them. They're hiring 2 people, the right ones who can hit the ground running on day 0. Extremely cautious hiring. Web3 is in a bull right now. Suddenly, companies that had not seen any transaction, any revenue in the past few months are seeing, $1 million days where they're making so much money on transaction fees. Yet, I'm seeing very conscious hiring posts. We're hiring 1 mobile engineer, 1 infrastructure engineer. No one's going euphoric. This is money they've made themselves. They want to keep it to themselves. At the same time, if there is a pain point in the company, they're going to hire for it, but very cautiously. People have learned their lesson from one bear. They are going to hire optimally is what I feel. DSA is not going to be a metric. Why are you saying this, Harkirat? Why are you against DSA? I am not against DSA. I am just thinking as a business owner. If I am hiring someone, it's good for them to know DSA. Frankly, it is the first level of interview that you might go through, but it's fairly easy to filter out people who cannot code. After you've gone through it, there will be rounds where you'll have to live code, most probably. This all comes from my experience, my set of companies, the companies that I've interviewed for, looked at, the circle that I'm in. This is not the FANG circle. Don't try to compare apples to oranges here. I feel that companies want to make sure that whatever you will be coding once you join the company, show us how you code, how would you solve such a small problem statement after you join the company. Along with this, system design is also a pretty popular choice of interview is what I feel. So DSA is probably not going to be enough if a job is what you're looking for. Anyways, it's a very boring thing to do. I feel, personal opinion, not something, you want to do beyond a point unless, you're interested in it, which, yeah, sure, in that case, go for it. Small actionable teams. Again, irrespective of if there is a lot of money, unless it's like euphoric money again, most probably teams are going to be lean. The reason for this is number one, it's much easier, better, faster to code now. People can delegate tasks and some other, writing tests, things like these to AIs. And generally, I talk to a few people and ask, bhai, if you're given a choice to, hire 10 people in India for 1 lakh rupees, or one engineer who's charging $20,000, which is basically the same amount, he said I would hire that one 10x engineer. Again, this is all personal experiences, but I feel the same. I think one 10x engineer who's charging 10 times more than 10 average engineers is much more powerful and impactful in a team. If you look at the current Y Combinator batch, even though companies are still raising $2-3 million of seed rounds, most of them have 1 or 2 technical co-founders who are full-time working on it. At max, they'll hire 1 to 2 engineers, give them a 100K, 120K kind of an offer, and that's what they're getting by with until they reach PMF. Compare this to a few years ago where companies were raising around 5 mil and were hiring at least 3-4 engineers right after YC. As you can see, the number is cut in half, and generally I think that's the right metric. I think engineers are twice as fast now thanks to AI. So don't be surprised if the number of job openings, the number of people in a specific company handling something get cut down by half. High equity is going to make you rich. Again, this is a personal opinion, but I feel today companies are going to have some basic benchmark of, okay, I'm going to pay an engineer 80K to 200K. That's going to be the cash component, no matter how good you are, unless you're working at some OpenAI or something. For most startups companies, there'll be a range for cash, which most probably won't make you wealthy. This is debatable and highly subjective, but I feel you'll begin to touch a ceiling in your cash component. And equity, if it works out well, is what will end up making you wealthy. This happens over multiple cycles and multiple companies. If one of your bet actually ends up working out. But even if it does not, you'll make some basic cash, which, if over a long period of time, if you invest correctly, you can still become wealthy over 10, 20 years. Being somewhere for the longer term. I feel this is another trend that's happening. During the bull, people change companies every 6 months because everyone's giving you better, bigger offers. Especially one thing you can do is do competitor hopping. Okay, go from one edtech to another because they really want to hire engineers from the other company and see what's happening there. I don't think that's happening anymore. I don't think companies are in FOMO of hiring engineers anymore. And for that reason, I think it would make sense for you to stick to a company for at least a year or two and, gain valuable equity there. And as I said, most probably equity is going to make you wealthy. The range for a seed startup that I'm seeing is you'll get a 100K offer plus anywhere from 0.3 to 1% equity, which if the company ends up doing well, let's say it is valued at 100 mil at some point, you might end up making more from your equity. There are some preconditions here. Not every startup becomes successful, but if it does, most probably, your wealth will come from here if this is the path that you're thinking of taking. Don't chase the 500K. You might see fancy outcomes like these. You might see me coming on the channel here and there talking about how much money I've made. If you take that as the bare minimum metric, you will never be satisfied with the offers that are out there that you can currently get. This comes from a personal experience where I referred someone right now at a pretty decent offer. But by the end of it, he was like, I'm happy, but this doesn't feel great. Bhaiya, 100K nahi hua. So my only response was, it will happen over time. It does not happen immediately. I've been working for a few years now. Mera banta hai, ab itna lena. If you're just starting out, even if you've been in the industry, but not done the right things until now, not coded the things that I'm going to talk about here, then slowly and steadily you'll get there. Don't chase the 4CR offer initially, and don't get disappointed if you're just getting, or whatever, you're getting a 60K, 50K, 30K US dollar offer. It's your first remote offer. You're working from the comfort of your home in a place where you're spending 20,000 rupees a month as expenses. You can still save a lot more. There's a good chance if you move to the US on a 100K salary, you'll end up saving the same amount. So try to stay a little humble when you get something, it always feels like thoda kam rahega. Don't try to pinch pennies here, at least on your first offer. Eventually, as you jump ships, feel free to, negotiate and squeeze as much as you want. Cool. Let's understand the ways to reach there. This is the roadmap of who will hire, how will they hire, how much will they pay. This is, if I were to start all over again, how would I start coding? More specifically, this is for people who are sure कि उनको coding करनी है. The one thing I would strongly suggest is this path is only going to be actionable if you are sure you want to be a developer in the next 6-8 months. This is not super productive if you're not yet sure, if you've not had a CS degree or any degree at all, if you've not been in engineering. This is not the right path probably. Then you should probably go for a much simpler boot camp first, understand things, and then dive into this. But if you're in a CS degree, generally doing engineering, done a little bit of DSA, want to get into a remote job, already do a job, then this is a decent path to follow. I think this is the right approach to get into any technology. This is how I learn more technologies, new technologies. Whenever I feel like, yeah, this industry seems like it's booming, or this is an industry I want to target. The way I target it is by using a top-down approach. What do I mean by this? I mean that bhai, don't learn things theoretically from day zero. Start building projects. Top-down means that bhaiya, I don't know Rust yet, but I'm going to build a project that can only be written in Rust. So I will, wiggle left, right and center, or what we say in Hindi ke haath pair maroge, to try to build the first scrappy version. This is great, amazing start. You at least understand the syntax of that language. Don't get stuck here. The problem with building projects on your own is you never know how projects are being built in the industry and the right way to build any project. And it's very easy to get stuck in beginner's hell. Ke haan, I have built a project which, well, does not scale beyond 10 people, but I have built it. If you take that project out in front of a CTO, they'll basically know in 2 minutes that this is not the right way to build something. So you have to build things the right way, the industry ready way. So do build projects, but open source them. Make sure people are ridiculing them. Make sure you are going through open source code bases and understanding that this is how a website like this would be built. This is how I would build a production ready system in Rust versus always writing it on your own. It's good to write it on your own. Build a V1. Most probably your V1 is going to be scrappy. Once you've done that, look at other open source projects out there. Make sure you're able to understand how code is written. If you understand how code is written in a good open source project, you will understand how to do it in an industry ready fashion. That is the right way to learn. That's probably the best way to learn as quickly as possible is number 1, build a scrappy project. 2, open source it. 3, put them on Twitter. This is highly underrated. Whenever I come and say something on this channel, usually that arbitrage closes very quickly. If I introduce an open source project, everyone's contributing to it. This is one advice that I feel I've said a lot, but people haven't really capitalized on it. Okay? Put your work out on Twitter. Most recruiters, most people that you'll meet for this specific path, most 90% of the companies that I've been in, I've gotten in touch via Twitter. So Twitter is an underrated way to showcase your skills. Whatever project you're building, good or bad, put a live version out and put it on Twitter. You will not have any reach initially, but as you approach recruiters, talk to HRs don't understand GitHubs. They do understand live projects. So this will be your showcase of all the projects that you've built. Reach out to early stage startups. That's the last advice. Okay, once you feel like you're ready and you've done all of these things, you can build projects, look at open source projects, you have open source them, you have put them on Twitter, you have retweeted them, gotten some reach. Then is the right time to reach out to early stage startups and show them how can you provide value. This is one thing that is uncertain. Everything else is a certain path. You can do this. This, whether or not you get a reply, depends a little bit on your luck, little bit on who is hiring, who is not hiring, little bit on the markets. This is one thing I cannot predict for you or tell you this always works. If you try 10 times, you try 20 times, maybe 1% replies. When they reply, you have to be ready. Ye sab should be done and only then apply. You don't want to be in a position where you're getting interviews but not getting in. If you get an interview, you should be ready 100% to nail that interview. Just keep that in mind. That's my only high level advice. The worst thing you can do is, you did the most uncertain bit you were able to crack, but the certain bits that this is the clear path to do this, you did not do. Okay? That's a high level roadmap of how I would target a job today. This keeps changing every cycle. What company to target, what industry to target is just based on where the funding is going right now. I'm not going to comment on that in this video, but at a high level, I feel this general path applies to most industries. If you want to get into machine learning, if you want to get into Web3, if you want to get into full stack, I would generally follow this approach to learn anything new. And this is how I would approach the market. If you feel this is too volatile for you, if you feel you wanted a certain path, jahan pe, DSA and a company comes and picks you, I don't think that's going to happen for at least these startups. I don't think it's ever happened for these startups, if I'm being honest. I don't understand the DSA, the fan market very well. I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not saying it's a dying market. Could be a great market. Could be, your future path. I'm not saying it's a bad path. I'm saying this is the path. These are the requirements right now. This is the way to learn what you want to learn. This is the uncertain thing. If it happens, great. If not, at least you learn something new. You can build your own projects. Cool. With that, let's end it. I'll see you guys in 2024. Bye-bye.